Welcome to episode 2 of Living Beyond the Shoreline. Today I'm joined by our special guest, Mike Jacobson. For those that don't remember, my name is Ben Feldman. I'm Director of Sales here at Wave Armor. Really fortunate to have Mike be part of the team. And with that, Mike, I'll kind of let you introduce yourself.
Well, thank you. Again, my name is Mike Jacobson. I've been with the company for quite a few years. Known Rick, the owner, for like 30 years prior to this, and I've started in the sales portion of Wave Armor. Moved on into R&D and designing of the new product, and they thought, and I did as well, that that's a better fit for me. I'm hands-on. I get involved in every part of the operations, and I like to problem solve. I like to get the clients taken care of and answer their calls when they're out the job sites. And so that's where I landed my hat now, and I really enjoy it.
So you left out some important parts there. That's very important. But new grandfather.
I'm very much a new grandfather. I love it, man. I didn't, for somebody to tell you that it doesn't change your life, they're lying.
Yeah.
They're lying. Yeah. So
I don't know if I'm ready yet, but I don't know if I have a choice.
you won't have that choice, Ben.
Probably.
You won't have that choice.
But. And then obviously Mike is got a pet, right? That's kind of published, goes to shows, is asked for by name. So tell us a little bit about Sage.
Yeah, so I've acquired Sage. Sage is my silver lab. People don't know too much about what a silver lab is, but they're a very rare breed to have out there. Sage I acquired. You can't see her, but she's literally sitting here right next to me. She has been a very good part of my life. She came from a family that was not able to home her. I picked her up at a year of age, and I couldn't understand why they wanted to get rid of her. I still to this day, I can't imagine why they wanted to get rid of her. She was still is the easiest dog to train. Will not leave my side for nothing.
For sure.
And she travels with me everywhere. If I drop a tool, she'll even go pick it up. So I'm just.
Let me ask you this: does she go to the fridge and grab your favorite drink too and bring it back to you?
We're not going to talk about that on air.
All right, there you go.
I can do that myself right now for a while.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Awesome. Today for this episode, what I wanted to do was really focus more so on, that PWC space, whether you call it a jet ski, whether you call it a Sea-Doo, or whether you call it a wave runner, right? Those are all sub-brands of manufacturers, but essentially they're personal watercraft, essentially,
Absolutely.
right? So I think, there's options out in the marketplace relative to what you can do with your PWC. Obviously, one of those options is just to leave it in the water and float it next to your dock and tie it off. The other is to store it on a trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those come with some downsides. From there, we start looking at on water storage, right? So can you walk me through kind of what a consumer has for on-water storage options and what those look like?
In the Midwest.
And they don't need to be specific to Wave Armor. We'll get into that
Right,
stuff as we go
right,
here.
right.
But yeah.
But typically out in the Midwest, you'll either see the floating lifts similar to ours or the competitors, or you'll get into the crank-ups. And the crank-ups are literally you'll float them into that aluminum structure, and you'll have a big round Ferris wheel that you have to spin and lift up your PWC to get it out of the water depth. And those are really the two main options that we have in the Midwest. When you go down south, there's some more options. There's a lot more floating capabilities that they have down there with the actual airlift systems that they're using in some applications in the marinas. But really in the Midwest, in our part of the neck of the woods that we're home to here, the biggest two items are the floating lifts or the crank ups.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring those up because I've had both of those options, right? So as you know, as you were part of my install, I moved from the crank up style, right? To now I have the drive on, drive off style, the Wave Armor product. And, I found myself as a parent, watching my girls and their friends use our PWCs, but it never ever failed where they would just crank them up enough so that the PWC would stay on the bunks, if you want to call it that, but it was still bobbing in the water. And, so it would require me to get off my lawn chair, right? And then go out and crank it up. So, super excited with the change to do that drive on, because that's one of those things as a user, it's much easier for pretty much any build strength, whatever you want to call it, to use a drive on and drive off. You can just use a little bit of throttle and, you can kind of work through that, right? So it's there's a little bit of a learning curve, but it's pretty easy once you get onto it.
Absolutely.
Once you
And
get
we
onto it.
we try to we try to teach as many of our clients as we can with our barcodes that are or QR codes that are on the PWCs, and also on what we're doing with YouTube and whatnot, to educate the clients to be able to properly install them and put them onto the ports. One of the biggest other downfall with the crank ups is water fluctuation.
That's a good call.
You
That's
know,
I
when
don't
you
see that a lot in my lake, so
yeah,
that's why I didn't reference it to the
right.
audience. But
But you get
yeah,
a lot of people that if they get water fluctuation and you're not out at your lake and you don't adjust these things to the proper water depth, you get back there, your PWC is now not on the bunks; it's getting bounced back and forth between the uprights. So knowing what you're using, where the floating, the lifts that we've got, everything consistently floats with whatever the water depths are doing. So it's a we like to put it in there and not think about it anymore, and it works out very well that way. So
yeah. So let's dive into a little bit more. We'll kind of dive into our product lineup. I think we'll start there, and then let's kind of go through how you would actually port it, right? When we think about PWC ports, we've got really two series of products, right? We've got an SLX series, and then we've got a Pro series. So let's kind of start there. Talk to me a little bit about the SLX version.
So the SLX has been out there for years and years and years, and it's proven itself. It really, really works well, and a lot of people still swear by it. They think it's the best one in the market. They don't want to walk away from it, and they're not. But we just gave them another option by moving into the Pro Series ports. And when you look at the SLXs, the difference between the two is the width of the wheels and the amount of adjustability that you can do with the wheels. So if you're looking at the Pro Series ports, the Pro Series ports has two pockets on the from center on the left and two pockets to the right, with 3/4 inch bushings that you can adjust incrementally, where the SLX has virtually three pockets left and three pockets right, and all you can do is adjust them within those pockets. Some people and some types of machines, the Pro Series ports will work much better for them than the SLXs work. Even though that you have a narrower wheel, so a narrower window to hit that hull, which could be good and could be bad because it's a narrower wheel for that type of unit. So we'll talk about that when we get into this, as far as what they call the Yamahas and the Nanos. So we'll get into that too.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the other thing too is when again, the way I view it being on the sales side is if you're a dealer that's had some legacy with the Wave Armor brand, you're very comfortable selling the SLX product, right? If you're a newer dealer or you've got more interaction with maybe some of the sales team, and you're going to hear us talk about the features and benefits of the Pro more, and those dealers will kind of accommodate based upon kind of what their experiences are. And one thing that keeps coming up to me in conversations is if you think about the mounting options, right, on the SLX, it uses the same mounts as the front mount as well as the side mount, right? And that's really creates one part to kind of either side mount or front mount, right? And dealers see a benefit in that, and then there truly is. There can be, right?
There can be,
There
yes,
can be.
there can be.
There can be. On the Pro Series, we actually have a different mount for the front and a different mount for the side, but that mount works across other Pro products,
Correct.
like our Pro Pontoon and our Pro 8 boat ports, our Pro 170, Pro 220 boat ports, right? So there's some give and take when you think about connections, and they're both great connections, right? So you don't sacrifice anything relative to the connectivity to the dock of moving one to the other. But as we're talking about connectivity, let's talk about and we'll kind of maybe go a little bit deeper dive into some of these features and benefits, but that's really the difference between the SLX and the Pro, right? On a high level is the wheels and
That's it. The buoyancy, the capacity, and everything else is identically the same. It's the exact same footprint, so that doesn't make any difference that way.
Yeah. And then let's talk a little bit about how the different mounting options, right?
Sure.
What a consumer and dealer have to think about when they look at the different options. So I think there's three of them in my mind of options to try to mount these, and I'll let you kind of run through them. I maybe missed one there, but
Yep, there typically is. I mean, the front mount is the very much the most popular version, where they're putting into a slip and they'll be putting two of them together or three of them together or 30 of them together. I mean, whatever they want to do, they're mounting them off of the front into a marine application. You can also do a side mount if you wanted to. If you wanted to click them off of the side of your dock, that would be perfectly fine. Now, depending on what type of dock you're attaching them to, if you're doing an aluminum roll-in or something like that, keep in mind our product is a big bobber. So you wouldn't attach them to aluminum roll-in dock. We would want that unit to be a freestanding unit. Because this big bobber, when you get real rough waves, it's going to capsize that aluminum roll-in dock if you're not careful how it's mounted correctly. But those are typically, like you indicated, are typically the three style of mounts, whether it's freestanding or front mounting or side mounting, you know.
Yeah.
And when you're getting into the freestanding unit, it's required that you do a minimum of 4 poles. Now, those 4 poles can be, if you've got 3 ports married side by side, 4 poles is still good when you're doing that type of unit. Now, when you get more than that, let's talk about it. You're probably going to want to get more poles in there if you're going to be doing 5 and 6 and 7 units on a freestanding. However, if it's freestanding, you're going to be doing 4 poles minimum, unless you're going to anchor those front 2 poles to your stationary seawall, retaining wall, or another dock. Otherwise, those 2 poles are constantly dancing back and forth and are going to loosen up, and you're going to lose your ports.
Yeah.
Potentially, or have damage. So,
Yeah, or even premature wear of the pipe sleeves, right?
Absolutely.
We actually,
Yep.
that's just, we had a call in the last 30 days of a customer who was saying, hey, I've got premature pipe sleeve wear. And it was exactly that. They used 2 poles instead of 3 or 4 for their application, and had no connectivity on those front poles back to a seawall or a dock. One thing you mentioned is you talked about a bunch of different things here relative to how we can mount them. Is there any dock that we can't mount to?
Typically not. I mean, we're a floating product. We want to be independent yet directly connected, So they're going to be floating. If you take down, let's just call Lake of the Ozarks, their docks over there are far taller than what they are here in the Midwest because of the size of the boats that are bringing into that area. And so their docks are usually 24 to 30 inches out of the water. And so our ports aren't that far out of the water, but our mount will actually allow it to still float independently, but yet connect to that dock. There is very few docks that I've ever found that I cannot hook onto.
Yeah, and I think that's a key piece, because I think some people think, like, that doesn't work on my product. I got to go buy their dock in order to use their port for a PWC, and that is truly not the case.
Right.
Worst case scenario, we pipe mount it, like you just mentioned, as a freestanding unit, and just sits beside your existing structure and goes up and down with the water levels. And we do a lot of those installs too, right? Especially in other markets, down south and in other spaces. So there truly is, if there's a will, there's a way. And a lot of those ways have been established, and they're available as a kind of a direct ship through the different connections that we have for these ports.
Right.
So,
And we can even attach to other floating docks that are out there. Of our competitors. So there's some of those that we can do out there as well. So
yeah, that's a good, I didn't even think of that, Mike. So
Yep.
we actually have what we call the connect link, right?
Yep.
That will actually connect to our competitor's product. And, and that tells you a couple things. One, the strength of how we believe in our product, because you could reverse engineer it too, right? And you could go the other way from Wave Armor to them. But we believe so much in our product and the stuff that we threw it out there, because we knew the general population wanted that ability to do so. So, that again, that speaks to some of the strength of our brand and innovation and the things that we're doing out there leading the market. Before we jump into the specifics on some of these models, the other thing I want to talk just a little bit about that we didn't touch on either the SLX or the Pro Series is really all of our product is foam filled.
Correct.
And talk to me kind of around some of those benefits, Mike, being foam filled, from your standpoint of being an installer, what you kind of see, and obviously those, and how those benefit back to the end user.
Absolutely. So the foam filling, just so people understand it, the foam doesn't add any buoyancy to our product whatsoever. It doesn't do anything for the product whatsoever. If anything, it hurts the buoyancy capacity of what our part is, because of you're adding additional weight to that port. But what that foam is actually doing is it's adding rigidity and strength to the product itself. So when you step on it, it's not like stepping on a milk carton. It actually gives it strength. When that personal watercraft gets pulled off of that port and you're out enjoying the life, that PWC port now has got some additional weight. So it's not bouncing across that water level either, because of the additional weight from that buoyancy. So it adds a lot of benefits to it as well. Also, being from the Midwest, we have some issues where something happens with a muskrat or something like that, that if it ever dug a hole into the plastic product, you get a nuisance like that, or a tree limb falls onto it and breaks a hole into the product. that foam is going to keep it floating. It's not going to sink that product. Yeah, you'll probably want to get it out of the water, and we'll get it fixed or get it repaired by somebody, but it will not sink to the bottom of the lake. It's always going to be usable for
Yeah, and
that
I
purpose.
think user mishaps, right? Life happens, right? We all know life
Life
happens,
happens.
and especially if you want your stuff to be used, it's going to show damage, use, whatever you want to call it, right? And the thing is like when I see my pontoon back out, you could back into the port, right? And all of a sudden now you got that prop nick that port, and you don't have to really worry about that sinking to the bottom. That rigidity that you talk about is really a key piece as well. And again, that is in addition to what our competitors do, right? Our product is very, very thick relative to the plastic wall, if you want to call it that, right? We're not taking a second seat position on that. All we're doing is we're adding to that thickness of the
Absolutely.
product by putting that foam in there, and it starts as a little bead and it expands, and it truly provides that rigidity. And again, if you want to see the difference, go jump on a Wave Armor product versus jumping on a competitive product,
Absolutely.
and you will see it firsthand. It sells itself
Yep.
as people understand what the differences are, and it's very demonstrably different.
We've got some very good YouTube videos out there where we've literally cut the ports in half and show you what the inside of our product really look like, and it's truly a benefit. It does add cost to it, it adds labor to it, but the product you're getting it for a lot longer life product by having a foam filled product.
I would agree. Again, that sustainability that we talk about, that we associate with our brand, really comes from the way that we manufacture that product. Again, once and done type of product. So we talked about the different models. We've talked about how you can kind of connect them. One thing we didn't, let me phrase that, the different series of models from Wave Armor. We didn't talk about the different models within Wave Armor, right? So we have SLX5, SLX6, we have Pro 5, Pro 6.
And then the Pro Wide Body.
Pro Wide Body, yeah, good call.
Yep,
Pro
yep.
Wide Body, and
Then we
then
got a Pro Inline.
Pro Inline, yep. So let's talk a little bit. What's a 5, what's a 6, and what's a wide body?
Thank you. Yeah, so the Pro 5 is literally the width of the port. So Pro 5 is 5 feet wide, Pro 6 is 6 foot wide, and then the Pro Wide Body is 80 inches wide. And the reason that we're doing this, that we're making the wider ports and the narrower ports and the whole family, people are going, why don't you just stay with one unit? Well, if you have a 10-foot wide boat slip and you need to get 2 units in that 10-foot wide boat slip, that's where the Pro 5s come into play, because they're not exactly 5 foot wide. They're a little under, so you'll literally get 2 ports into a 10-foot boat slip. Okay. If you got a 12-foot wide boat slip, you don't want to put 2 5s in there, because now you're going to have that real estate around the both side that you can fall into the lake or twist an ankle or something. So now we've got 2 6-footers that'll go into that 12-foot window. Or if you're just putting it on the outside of your dock and you want the real estate to put gas on, put your covers on, whatever you're trying to do with your units, they're a lot funner or easier to maintain. And then you move into the wide bodies. The wide body is 80 inches wide.
It's a great port.
It's a great port. It's a great port. The beauty of the wide body is not only is it good for PWCs, but it's also great for your small little skiffs. We get down south in the southern part of the world, and these guys are putting their little 14, 15-foot boats on that are running out to their sailboat with.
Yeah.
So.
And when Mike says 14 footers, we've talked about the width. We haven't talked about the length yet, right? So before we leave the width, one thing, we mentioned it at the beginning, the SLX5 is 5 feet and the SLX6 is 6 feet.
Yep.
Those are available in 5 and 6s, and then the Pro actually has that additional wide body. So I just want to clarify that we actually have them 5 and 6 footers available in both series of products.
Both series,
right?
Yep.
And then from there we jump into length, right?
Right.
And then we get into this thing that we call the max,
Yep.
right? So walk me through kind of what that looks like.
So when you're looking at the maxes, and it's MAXX, so when you look at the maxes, that's actually a 14-foot port now. So you're talking a 12-foot long port, or 11/8, and then you jump up to the 14-foot long port. It gives you more buoyancy. It gives you more length for those 3-person personal watercraft ports that are out there, the fish and skis, you'll call them, and things like that. So we're making those 6 units all in the Pro family. So we got the Pro 5, Pro 5 Max, Pro 6, Pro 6 Max, wide body Max. We have those in all those families.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can pick a 12.5 footer, or you can pick a 14 footer, right?
Yep.
And really, that's for the end user to decide. And it's funny because there's always couple times a year we'll get that call like, this is what I've got. What do I want to do? Right. And the reality is it's really up to the end user. And I'm going to kind of walk through a couple scenarios for you, those that are paying attention, and you can sure jump in here, Mike. But we all run the 12.5 footers, right? This standard pro is essentially what we run our standard 6. I've got the 3-seater. I've got the Wake Pro, right? In my fleet of personal watercraft. And the reason that I chose that model was there's no challenge with buoyancy, right? And you've got enough length with that one as well, right? So when you talk about the users and kind of the conditions of where it's put, I don't need additional protection from waves pushing on the back, right? So that's the first thing that I can kind of sacrifice. And two, I shared on the other episodes, I've got a couple girls, and I want to make it as easy as possible for them and my wife, and some of the younger kids that come and visit to roll that thing off. And it's just, gravity takes over faster, if that makes sense, as you're pulling it back less distance. And that's ultimately why I chose what I chose. Now, when we've got that customer that calls in and says, I want that additional protection from the waves, I don't care about the length I've got to pull it, that Max is a great fit for that. And then you mentioned earlier about the skiffs and some of that stuff, right? So anything in that 14-foot smaller boat type stuff, you could entertain that as well.
And then when we get down south, we get a lot of people out there that what they're doing is we get the barnacle growth. So when you go down south, you're going to get a lot of barnacle growth that we're not familiar with here in the Midwest. And that product, I've been down there, my arms are going to prove it to you that on how many times you've been cut up by barnacles, and it'll add and take away buoyancy off them ports. Not necessarily a big issue because we're over capacity of what the PWCs weigh anyway, but it still does a benefit. And then once you start adding the canopies to the unit that we haven't even talked about yet, we'll get into that in a minute. And then once you get into the canopies are going to potentially take away a little bit of a buoyancy as well. So
we got Sage here.
That's Sage. Yeah. You want to come say hi? Come and say hi. Come here. Hey, come over here. Yeah, when we get into those canopies, we can probably work into that right now because we actually work into canopies on all the versions as long as you have a Pro Series port. It will not work on the SLXs, so keep that in mind. If you've got a Pro 5, Pro 6, Pro wide body, we have a canopy for all them versions. But we do not have a canopy for the SLX.
And I just want to be clear, we have a canopy for a pair of them, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I just want to be
not
clear
a peat,
that we have a canopy for a pair. So when you think about that protection, and that's important to me.
Yep.
Right. So I think not only do we have that protection, but we have it for any pair of the pros, essentially, right? And then we also have it with different drapes too, right? So we have it, when we say drape, it's really the curtain on the side of the port that goes kind of all the way around.
The side protection from the sun.
Side protection from the sun and rain and some of that stuff. So we have it in a 24-inch as well as a 48-inch. To me, I'm a 48 user all day long, right? Just because I'm super particular about my stuff, and those friends that are watching, I'm sure, are chuckling right now. But and nonetheless, it's like I'm super protective of those things. So a lot of options again relative to that, to the different ports. Anything else on canopies before we kind of hit there? I know that you did a lot of R&D and development.
No, there's been, I tell you what, that's been a game changer. It really has. And especially with that 48-inch drape, for anybody that wants to really protect their PWCs, jump onto that port, put your PWC underneath that canopy, hang your life jackets up from inside that canopy. We've got a place for you to do that, and go in the house and enjoy life. It's just as simple
We're
as
supposed to
that.
enjoy life on the water, not in the
Well,
house, mate.
maybe it's getting dark. Maybe the storms are coming in. Maybe the wife called. You need to get your butt inside.
There you go.
I've met your wife, by the way.
Yeah. Yes, you have. So he knows who keeps me in line. Let's put it that way. Kind of to that point, I think that's one thing that I didn't touch on a canopy, and you just kind of spurred my memory there, is that with the canopy on our 12x14s and our 13x14s, you're able to add some PVC to really store those life jackets, right? So when you get off the water, off the lake, and everything's all wet from the fun that you did have out there, is it gives you a nice place to dry everything back out and hang it right there. And it's also a reminder for those that are going to go use the PWCs or the watercraft, like they're staring right at you as you're trying to pull your PWC off, like you better have your life jacket on. So it's kind of that insurance policy there too. So Yeah, well thought out,
Yep.
good design kind of in that space. Um, one thing I want to talk a little bit more about was we talked about the series SLX and Pro. We talked about the width and we talked about the length. I want to do a little bit deeper dive into really our flagship product, which is truly our Pro product, right?
Mhm.
When we think about the wheels, right? You mentioned a little bit earlier that they're a different width of wheel.
That's correct.
And I also think they're a different durometer. So why don't you kind of walk us through? There's a blue wheel, red wheel, and kind of
Sure.
what that all means.
So all of the Pro Series ports, you'll see when you first come onto that port, the first two sets of wheels that when you come onto that port on the Pro Series ports are blue, and that is a 50 drum. It's a soft rubber wheel, and it basically what it's going to do is cushion the impact when you come on. We ask everybody when they get onto that PWC that they come on entering onto that port, get their nose nestled in, straighten up your handlebars, and literally power on. The worst thing that's going to happen if you don't go on far enough is you'll roll back into the water and you do it again. And it's just a tried and true. Once you get it figured out, you'll get it figured out.
Yeah, and all those wheels, all the wheels on our PWC ports are drilled as well. And again, to give that, again, the ability to give that give, if you want to say that, relative to when you board that port. And when I think of the Pro, I think about protection, and I know that's not why it's labeled that, but it just happens to work that way. So again, you talk about the wheel, the width and the softness of that wheel,
Mhm.
right? You talk about the foam filled, and again, the SLXs too, but they're foam filled. Now you got a padded bow stop,
Mhm.
right, with the Pro,
Mhm.
and then you got that safety chain and clip, right? So you think about those
Yep.
different things there that all provide
And
protection.
what you recall the Pro as what?
Protection.
Oh, I call it perfection.
Oh, there you go. Hey, it's all the same.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's all the
So,
same.
yep. Yep.
Yeah, so the padded bow stop, it comes with the safety chain and the clip. And that's one of the differentiators between the SLX and a Pro as well. And that safety chain is a key component.
It absolutely is. And you can buy that safety chain as a separate entity for the Pro or SLXs too if you want to add that to it.
Sure.
But that safety chain is 20 some inches long when you get it. It's not designed for you to put the clip, the carabiner clip at the very end of that, because when you put it on the end of that 20-inch chain and hook it on your PWC, when you get rough waves, that thing is just going to be bouncing back and forth, balancing back and forth when you're not at the lake, and you can't control that. That was by design. So you're supposed to remove that carabiner clip, move it down as close to the close proximity of that bow stop you can, and now hook it onto your personal watercraft. And then you take the balance of that chain, run it back through the front of your eyelet, and put a padlock on it and secure that thing out for the weekend. So you don't need to worry about it. Lock it up. Peace of mind when you're away from your lake. You don't need to worry about your personal watercraft walking away.
Yeah, where do you live next to me? Because I'm going to take the bolt out and take your PWC.
No.
Just messing with you.
Yep. You can't take a bolt out on that one.
You can't?
Not very easily, not unless you got the right tool.
Okay.
It's not just a standard.
We're all
Yep,
learning together
yep,
here.
Yep. It's not. I didn't make it so everybody has a pocket knife to take it apart.
Got
But
it.
everybody does have a bolt cutter in their back pocket, I would imagine. They're going to probably take it if they wanted to break it and take it. They will.
could. Yeah,
So,
that's
but
true. So
it
just keep
slows them
everybody,
down.
keep the honest people honest.
Yep. Yep.
All right. So let's one more thing before on that safety piece of it. We talked a little bit about the wheels and how soft the wheels are.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned it early in our conversation about Yamaha, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you've got a great story. We were together right at the Atlanta Boat Show when you
Yep.
overheard some Yamaha engineers talking
Yep.
about this drive-on
It was
product.
actually a repair facilities they're a fiberglass repair company, and all they do is fix boats and PWCs. And during the Atlanta Boat Show, he had came up to our booth, and he had his entire team with him. It was before the show started, and he didn't know me from Adam. And he was talking about the fact that he said, "No, this is why we tell all of our clients that will fix their PWC, but from now on out to stay away from this type of product. We don't want them on anything like this at all." I interjected myself with him at the moment, and I went over there and I asked him if he could repeat what he indicated, and I told him that I said that couldn't be further from the truth. I said that's what we did. We changed the diameter of the wheels, the width of the wheels to combat the product. That gentleman took a bunch of flyers with him after he left our booth, and he said, told all of his people he was with, he said, I correct myself. He said, I want you guys to direct these guys towards Wave Armor in the future. So
Yeah.
we turned him from sour to sweet, just like that, So it was
Yeah,
very
and
decent.
that Yamaha that we're talking about is really the nanotechnology, nano hull technology. and they just lightened up the product. And at the same time, there was floating product out in the market, right? So the industry had to react to the again, like we talked about, how we're worried about how the stuff performs on there, right? The manufacturers are worried about
Mm-hmm.
how their product
Mm-hmm.
performs. So sometimes there can be a little bit of a gray area where you're trying to catch up to something, and that was really the birth of the Pro Port, right?
Yep.
And trying to combat some of the changes that we saw in the manufacturing process with the Yamaha Wave Runner, right, which is a great
Yeah,
product.
they're great. They're a
A
fantastic
great
product.
product. We
Really
actually
are.
have a couple in our fleet.
Yep.
So I
Yep.
mean,
Yep.
we actually use the same products that we talk about, and a great product, awesome build quality, great motors.
Yep.
Just again, we see
Mm-hmm.
you and I see
Mm-hmm.
all the warranty claims too, right? And I haven't seen much for PWC claims at all, and I've never seen any damage with the Pro Port.
No. No.
And that's even storms, for that matter. But again, we warranty our stuff 8 years against
Mm-hmm.
manufacturer's defects. Um, and we continue to figure out ways to create that longevity of the product and make sure that PWC is safe on that port. I put my PWCs on our port.
Right.
That tells you
Yep.
the confidence, right? So we're not just saying it just to say it. We actually truly
We live it.
we
live it.
truly use our
Mhm.
product, and we're enthusiasts first, employees second, me specifically. So it is what it is, and I'm happy to bring people out and
Mhm.
let any new rider
Mhm.
ride on our product and know that they're going to be
Yep.
safe and they can come off and on, and I don't really have to worry about my product.
And to that end, we actually do the testing on the other end. I mean, we abuse it too. I mean,
I've seen it.
we don't go in there and
I,
we're trying to act like the consumer that doesn't have any clue of what they're doing, and we haven't had any problem at all with with the product
reminds
every
me of the
time.
dealer meeting we had,
Yep, it
right?
does. Yeah,
It does. Just for those
yeah.
listening, we had, just to say, 100 people, give or take, and we had the ability for them to use our product, a Watercraft, to drive off and on our product, and it literally seemed like it was, can we bust it
Looked
type
like
of
the Shrine Circus out there. It did.
episode,
The
right?
Shriners were out
The,
there on their go-karts, and I
the
just
reality is, I pulled the tether in mine, but our fleet vehicles were put
yeah.
through that
You
regime.
did that before they walked out in
Yeah,
the back. Yeah,
yeah,
I know
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
But we're happy to report there was no damage, and
No.
it was truly tested that day. So
Yeah.
we do pressure test, if you want to call it that, performance of our product. Let's talk a little bit about. Well, where do you want to go? Maintenance, or do you want to talk a little bit about maintenance
Yeah,
first?
let's go on to maintenance.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go into maintenance.
So, what do you think maintenance looks like on a PWC port?
Pressure washer. Once a year, get out there, depending on what type of part of the world you live in. Get a pressure washer out there. Get a can of WD-40 and spray your axles down after you're getting done pressure wash. Put some lubrication back on them again. Knock the barnacles off of them if they're out there. A little scrub brush here and there. Dawn dishwashing liquid works phenomenal. You're not going to hurt the product with any other type of. I mean, I don't want to put anything in the environment as far as Lysol or anything, pouring that in the lake. But I mean, if you got some type of a user-friendly cleaning agent, put it on there. Brillo pad, scuff pad to get any debris off it, and then pressure wash it off, and you're good to go. But that's usually all you have to do with a personal watercraft port. When you get into the crank up lifts, you got to worry about cables and winches and pulleys and things like that. So ours are
Bunks rotting.
yeah.
I mean, all those things, right?
All those things are
Yeah.
our plastic lasts a long time. I never really had too much issues with it whatsoever. And just watch watch the port, make sure everything is performing correctly, and maintenance is pretty minimal.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's probably overlooked, and we haven't touched on it yet, as we were going through this, and it's not necessarily a maintenance issue, but it is a maintenance issue if you change watercraft, right? And that is really, how do you set these wheels on these
Good
PWC
point.
ports, right? So, I talked about the various watercraft I've had, and when you move from watercraft to watercraft, there should be some sort of maintenance done relative to where that wheel position is.
Mm-hmm.
But even when you do that first install, a key piece around performance is going to be where those wheels are. So, can you walk us through
Yep.
maybe a little bit of that? Where do we set our wheels?
Absolutely. So
Eh,
every personal watercraft that you buy, you get the opportunity to buy the trailer with that unit. A lot of times people don't have a use for a trailer, so they don't do it. But if in fact you did buy a trailer, there's your first place to start. You look at your bunks on your trailer. of your PWC port, and you take a tape measure and you measure from inside to inside on your bunks, and you replicate that measurement. If it's 28 inches, you get your wheel spread at 28 inches minimum apart. There's a very good rule of thumb. If in fact you don't have a trailer, the best thing I'm telling you to do is look at the bottom of your personal watercraft, look where your strakes are in the bottom of your port, take a tape measure across it, and figure out where that measurement is, and make sure your wheels are beyond what that measurement are. Because you don't want your personal watercraft sitting kittywampus onto that port. You want to sit nice and flat and level, and you don't want any of the wheels to come and combating with the side of those ribs on the side of your boat. So there's numerous different setups that we've got. And when you get into the Pro Series, being it's a wider wheel, it's a little bit more tricky to get them so they don't touch the keel. But when also you look at those wheels, they're not only wider, they're also self-aligning. So they've got a hub in them that the wheel will actually articulate like this on the port to fit the hull of your boat. You're not just hitting on the corners of that wider wheel. That wheel will actually articulate to fit the full hull of that boat.
Sure. And those dealers watching, obviously you've got access to Mike. Those customers, if you're watching and you have concerns and questions around wheel setup, you can sure call our customer service number too. And we can help guide you through that process as you guys get to that. And buy new skis, new installs. If you're DIYing the install, we're here to help.
Yep.
That's the one thing we haven't really talked on in either episode that we've had so far is really the service.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a key piece to our equation, our value proposition to the industry.
And when you
our dealers and customers alike.
Yeah, we don't want you to not buy updated PWCs. You do not have to buy a brand new port to fit that new PWC. Correct. Just work with us, get a hold of me if you need to, or do what I indicated as far as setting the wheel placement to where it needs to go. But we can make that work for any of your personal watercrafts that are out in the world today. There's no problem with that.
Sure. So I think that coming to the end of this episode, Mike, is there anything that I forgot about, or maybe we skipped over that you'd like to highlight?
Well, we should talk a little bit about where if your personal watercraft port should be left in the ice all winter long in the Midwest.
Yeah, good call. Yeah, that was.
We get into that call quite a bit over here. We're in the Midwest. We got ice, and they want to know whether or not is this safe to leave it in all winter long? First thing I got to ask them: do you have any ice damming? Do you get any ice shifting? What is it like in your lakeshore? If you don't get any of that, you're in a nice, quiet, secluded bay, leave it in. There really is not going to be an issue. But go back in history and ask your neighbors. If you're moved into the neighborhood, go ask your neighbors to see what kind of ice damming they're getting before you make that final decision. But the damage is very, very, very minimal. If that ice changes a little bit, you might bend a pole, you might bend a post bracket, you might bend versus that $500 that it costs you to have that install done. It may be beneficial for you to leave it in. It's not warranted against it, because Mother Nature can turn her ugly head anytime it wants to. Absolutely. But in a lot of applications, we're pretty safe by if you know what your environment is, we can leave them in all year round. So
that's a good call there at the end here, just to kind of reiterate that. And it's funny because we were talking about ice installs. We've been doing ice installs, right, on certain bodies of water, and here it is. It's April, and we're worried about getting out and getting these installs done. But we've been installing for 30 days, give or take, right? So
we've done a lot of ice installs already, and stay ahead of that. I mean, Ben and I've done it already on a few docks already, and it gets our dealers to be able to get their product in and get the clients out on the water right away in the spring, and they don't need to wait for that timing to open up. So
sure,
ice was very nice to us this year.
It absolutely was. So before we wrap up, I think one more thing I have for you, Mike, is what's your favorite Wave Armor product?
Oh. Can I say all of them? There's.
You can only have one.
I can only have one. I'm gonna say right now it probably has to be the new Pro 170 220 for the Sea-Doo switch.
Yeah.
It's proven itself. I haven't got as much gray hair as you do from it. It's really worked out very well. Brian and I have been doing a lot of testing and setting up all the parameters on every personal watercraft or every Sea-Doo switch that's out there, so we know what the settings are. And every one that we told them over the phone on how to set them up have worked flawlessly. And so I'm going to say it's been the Pro 170 220 with the Sea-Doo switch conversion.
Perfect. You couple that with the power launch.
The power launch has been really phenomenal, and yep.
For
So,
sure. Great product. Good pick. Um, thanks for watching. If you guys like the content, like, subscribe. If you got some comments on what you'd like to hear us talk about in the future, please leave those below as well. With that, you live by the water, but do you live on the water?